This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Good afternoon, Brian Edwards. For those listening or watching, no relation. We've become acquainted through the podcast and through social media, and it's a real honor to have you on the podcast and contributing to this project. Brian is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt. You are a multiple-time Masters World Champion and Pan Am Champion at the Masters level. You can see those medals right behind you. You are live from South Carolina?
Yes, Florida,
and
South Carolina.
You are an insurance agent with State Farm.
Correct, yes.
Excellent. So we have on our hands a true black belt martial artist and competitor, and also someone who is a successful business person. And from your social media, a family man living with 6 women.
That's exactly
5 daughters
right.
And a wife.
Absolutely, man. They're my pride and joy. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Brian, tell me about your business career, how you got started in jiu-jitsu, anything you think we should know.
Okay, so as far as jiu-jitsu goes, I'm your typical guy that was watching MMA and getting interested in MMA. I was in my early 30s at the time. I'm in my mid to upper 40s now, and just saw how effective jiu-jitsu was. Wanted to give it a try. I live in a fairly small town in South Carolina. Nothing was available here in Florence at the time, so I drove to Myrtle Beach about 2 hours each way to take private lessons with a black belt there, a Helson Gracie black belt, Shane Briggs, and did that for about a year. Got some excellent training under him. And then my professor moved from Dallas, Texas to Florence and opened up SwampFox Jiujitsu, which I'm now the current owner of. So we're fortunate to have a local academy now, and it's been around now for almost 13 years, a little over 12 years.
Wow.
And I ended up buying it from my professor, Tim, about 4 years ago. So
That's fantastic.
It's been great, man. Thank you.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. I found my way in preparing for this podcast onto the SwampFox website, but I didn't see that it said that you were the head instructor and owner. That's really great.
Thank you, man. It's a passion. It's one of the things I wanted to get involved in, and owning a couple other businesses. I thought, hey man, it's my passion. It's what I want to do. Jump in head first, and man, I've never regretted it. It's so much fun, enjoying it.
That's great. What other businesses do you own?
Like you said, State Farm Insurance. I have a State Farm Insurance agency that I have been doing since 2003, so almost 18 years in the insurance and financial service industry. And then a real estate holding company, Brian Scott Properties. I have a partner that we've done some real estate transactions with since 2006. So SwampFox, the real estate, and then also State Farm.
That's really awesome. It's in the capacity as a real estate. Is that as an investor or as a broker?
Just as an investor. And it's one of those things where, unfortunately, we had to learn the hard way. When we started Brian Scott Properties, this was in 2006. So you quickly realize where I'm going here, what happened in 07, 08, 09 with the real estate market. So, and we're not we're not nearly as active in it as we once were. Yeah. And, but at the same time, we learned a lot, man. We really did. Learned a lot about business, learned a lot about real estate investing. And sometimes the market doesn't always dictate that it can be really beneficial.
Well, one of my motivations for starting this project and writing this book, Business Jiu-Jitsu, came from all the guys that I roll with on the mat that would come to me with a business idea, or that they had some kind of job and they wanted to branch out, and me giving business advice over the years. And real estate is always a hot topic. People, the home flipping or buying a little 2-plex or 4-plex. And yesterday, off the podcast, a young man reached out to me with similar questions. He saved up some money and he's got a full-time job, and he wants to take that risk and make an investment property. And that was my advice to him. I said, did you expect to be a white belt and step on the mat and instantly become a black belt? I said, you're going to have to take your licking over many, many years and make tons of mistakes before you really figure it out. So anybody listening to this who's interested in real estate and asking me if they should, go ahead and take the leap, I always say go for it. But if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, just recognize that you are not going to be an expert immediately, and there's a lot to learn.
That's a great illustration, man. It really is, because if you've been doing jiu-jitsu for any amount of time, you've taken your licks, like you said, and you start getting into entrepreneurship and you start getting involved in real estate or any type of investing, you're going to take some licks. You stay in there long enough, you will, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that is. So as your capacity as an insurance agent, what do you specialize in?
We've done a lot through State Farm over the past, like I said, 17, 18 years. And originally I got involved in it from a financial services standpoint. I studied to be a certified financial planner, passed the CFP board exam, and really wanted to get involved in financial planning. State Farm started going that route with mutual funds, with securities. And then within the past several years, insurance and financial services, not to get too technical, got a little bit split as far as regulation goes. And so now with State Farm, we do less from a financial services standpoint and more from an insurance standpoint. So we still do a little bit from a retirement, education, planning standpoint, but mostly just property and casualty insurance, life and health insurance.
A bit of advice, maybe this is something you could talk about and promote your services a little, is that how important it is to get life insurance at a young age. People think, oh, life insurance, I don't need life insurance until I'm going to die. But one of the things that I learned very, very early on, I was very fortunate to be tutored, and I made life insurance a part of my portfolio right when I came out of college, and it was so cheap. And I was able to get so much at such a low rate that now at 35 years old, almost 36, I have a really nice amount of health insurance with a big cash equivalent. So maybe talk about that a little, because I think it's an overlooked part of the portfolio. A little bit risk adverse, but an important part if you can afford it.
It really is, Jordan. I'm glad you brought it up. There's nothing sexy about life insurance. It's not fun. It's not like day trading or making investments, in the market. But like you said, it's extremely important. You don't think about it when you're in your 20s and you're not married and you don't have kids and you don't have all these liabilities or you don't have dependents. But when you're my age or you get in your 30s and, you start thinking about it, then it's gotten more expensive than it was when it was in when you were in your 20s. Not only that, but if you have any health issues, you may not qualify anymore. And, like myself, I've got 5 daughters. I've got a wife that stays at home and takes care of them. And if something were to happen to me, without life insurance, they would be in a really tough situation. And so I think it's prudent as a father, as a business owner, and as a provider that I have it.
Yeah, it's also a really good lesson and an easy lesson to illustrate in compounding interest for young people to understand. And I've advised young people, and they're like, well, I have student debt and I want to buy stocks and I want to do this investment. And I said, the earlier you start in accruing life insurance, it's just one of the building blocks that's really important to have, because, you're 22 years old, but then all of a sudden you get married and all of a sudden you have kids, and that small investment, which you could have started just a couple bucks a month, 25, 30, 40, $100 a month, it builds so fast. And now here I am, I think, let's see, I must have bought my first life insurance policy when I was about 22 or 23. And now I have tons of life insurance, and I have a 2-year-old son and one on the way. And I've built up so much momentum, and it's crazy how the years go by. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about, because as someone who sells life insurance, it's sometimes hard for the people who are selling it and pitching it to young people than it is when you have someone like me. I have no stake in the game other than I did it. And so I always advise them to make it a part of the portfolio. It's a building block in the foundation. Yeah,
and it gets a bad rap. It really does. Life insurance gets a bad rap. You mentioned the words life insurance, and people are like, no, I don't want to talk to the life insurance salesman guy. Yeah. But it really does. But, you bring up a great example about the cash value. Much like you, I bought several policies in my 20s, and it's been over, 20 years ago since I bought some of these policies. I look at the cash value in them now. I look back and think, I wish I'd have bought 10 times the amount that I bought, because of what it's done over the last 20 years. Like I said, not sexy, You're not earning some great interest rate on it. You're not, beating the market or anything, but you've got that consistent growth over time while you have coverage for your dependents as well.
Yeah, it's really great. And just to clarify, but we're talking about whole life insurance has a cash value, but what you can do is, what I did was I bought a little bit of whole and a lot of term that can convert. And it's just listen, I'm 35 and I love seeing that cash value. It's just a beautiful thing that it's built up over all these years. And no, it's not as sexy as my stock portfolio. It's not as risky as some Bitcoin that I bought. And it's not as topical. No one's ever called me about, they always want to know about house flipping or property investing or how do I do it? But, for the purposes of having a discussion with you, who's in the business, I really would tell every single young person to look at buying some convertible term at the very, very least. It's a really conservative investment for you.
It is, and I completely agree. And anybody who's watching, Jordan and I did not have this conversation ahead of time.
No, but I am passionate about it, and there's not a single day that goes by that I'm not coaching or speaking with a young future entrepreneur or business person that comes to me, especially off this podcast. People have been reaching out to me so often, asking me these questions, and they want to know about, the advanced ashigarami, as John Danaher put it, but they don't want to know about the building blocks. And when I spoke to John, he said, nobody ever asked me about the language of my program. They want to know how to do a heel hook. So I would say that, the conversation we're having right now is kind of the fundamental aspect of getting to building wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I love how the illustration, you keep going back and forth to jiu-jitsu. I'm reading a couple different books on investing right now, and they're really applicable to the times because of what's going on in the market with all, seems eerily similar to back in 1999 and 2000. And you got to learn how to shrimp, and you got to learn how to upa, and you got to learn how to escape side mount. You got to learn how to, posture and guard before you ever start talking about, the heel hooks, or you got to talk about a tornado sweep or anything like that. So, the illustrations are great because you can study that stuff all the time, but if you don't have your basics down and you don't have your fundamentals down, all you're going to end up doing is getting hurt more ways than one.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I'm going to illustrate in this book and hope to connect to people on. And life insurance is one of the things that I will touch on as part of building a portfolio and being insured generally and just having a good understanding. One of the things I also advise people normally is, your lawyer, your accountant, your insurance agent, these are people that you should look at as tools in your toolkit. There are people that you need to make sure that they are great, honorable, ethical people that when you make a phone call, they're there for you. And, my insurance agent, so many times in business, unfortunately, when you're in the real estate business like I am, and when you have hundreds of employees in my clothing business, you're going to get sued. Just a fact. It's an unfortunate fact of life of doing business in 2021 that you get sued. And whether it's a slip and fall in a parking lot of an apartment building, or it's an employment issue, you need to make sure that you're insured properly. And if you don't have an insurance agent who's going to give it to you straight and say, you need to be insured properly, and this is the type of insurance that's available, you're going to learn a very expensive lesson.
Well said. And that, like you said, that goes for your accountant, that goes for your attorney, that goes for your financial planner, your insurance agent. I mean, across the board. I couldn't agree more. And like you said, unfortunately, I've learned the hard way in many of those cases.
Yeah. Yesterday, when I was talking to that young man and he was asking me about making his first real estate investment, we were talking about cash flow. And I was giving him an introduction to depreciation and why making an investment in real estate, even if it didn't have enough cash for this elusive passive income that everybody always wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Everybody's searching for the passive income so that they could stop working and just collect these checks. And so I told him, yeah, maybe in a decade from now, after you've paid down a ton of principal on your property and maybe you've refinanced it, maybe it'll throw off some income for you. But a better reason to look to invest in real estate right now is, the depreciation and sheltering income and paying down that mortgage every single month. That's probably a more realistic goal for you. And I said, you need to talk to your accountant about this. And he said, I don't have an accountant. And I said, well, then before you start to invest in real estate, you need to go develop a great relationship with an accountant or someone like Brian here, who is a great insurance agent. And these really are, that was one of the things I was excited to talk to you about today is people like yourself. These are the tools of the toolkit of the businessman. You need to have great relationships with people, and the jiu-jitsu mat is the perfect place to build these relationships. Brian, in your academy, you probably have people that come from a wide range of backgrounds, and the person that you sweat with and that you train with, you're going to know what kind of person they are. Are they spazzy? Are they reliable? Do they constantly come? You can't hide on the mat. And so I advise some of the guys that I work with or train with, it's a great place to start building your network.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And like you said, I mean, people from all walks of life. We've got accountants in there. We've got financial planners. We have other insurance agents. We have car salesmen. I mean, we have stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. We've got students, everybody. And it's interesting how quickly someone can say, hey, Brian, do you know a great accountant, or do you know a good attorney for real estate? And I can pull somebody up right out of our academy and say, yes, not only do I know them well, I train with them, and I know they're a stand-up person as well.
Yeah. So yeah, the jiu-jitsu mat and being part of an academy is a great place for people to begin to network. And one of the things I also have been hearing a lot lately is I don't know how to network. And I said, the fact that you and I are talking right now means that you do know how to network. You're just not aware of it yet. As we were talking about life insurance, you brought up your family, and I thought it was worth bringing up. I'm just going to share my screen for a second, if you don't mind. You are the jiu-jitsu dad.
Yes.
And you have a beautiful family, 5 daughters and a wife. But there's no doubt that you are a manly, physical specimen, a dude. What's it like, what's it like being a girl dad?
Every time when we to go back a little bit, our first daughter was stillborn 16 years ago. And after that happened, it was one of those reality checks where I just said, I just want a child. I want a healthy child. I didn't care if it was male or female. We were really scared going forward with our pregnancies. And so after that, not only one daughter, but 2, 3, 4, and 5. And with each one of them, of course, there was a piece of me inside that wanted a boy. Just like if you had all boys, you probably end up with a girl sooner or later. But after about my 3rd daughter was born, I realized that I was a girl dad. And I could tell it was what I was meant to be. It was what I was meant to do. It's where I felt at home. And now I've got a 6-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old, I've got a 10-year-old, almost 11 this week, 13 and a 15. And I don't know what I would do with a boy. And I'm sure a boy dad would end up saying the same thing about a girl. But we do volleyball, we do dance, we do cheer, and we do jiu-jitsu. And if I ended up going to the baseball field or the football field, we would be split going in many more directions than we're already going in. But man, they're awesome. They're all different. They all, they've all trained jiu-jitsu. They love it. Even my wife does as well. She's off the mat right now. But so man, I love being a girl dad. I wouldn't have any other way. I'm excited to come home every day.
How does it, being a family man like that, play into, the jiu-jitsu principles and what you learn in martial arts, and bringing that to your daughters, and even your wife, like you said, has trained over the years?
It's really interesting. My wife sometimes will look at me and say, hey, Brian, you need to go choke somebody. You need to go to the academy. Like, she knows how beneficial it is for me. Not only for something I enjoy, but also as a release. She knows that jiu-jitsu makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father. It makes me a better friend. It makes me more patient. There's so many benefits to it that you don't realize until you start to train. I can go and train on our comp class on Sunday and just, get the crap beat out of me, come home, end up painting my daughter's toenails and playing Barbie on the floor afterwards, And so that's not something that every dude can do. And under normal circumstances, that's not something that I'm really comfortable with. But after an hour and a half, 2 hours of jiu-jitsu, it's pretty easy to do.
It is pretty interesting. One of my companies is a women's fashion company. And
Really?
I have no background in women's fashion. As a matter of fact, it's like you turn left one day and that's what you're doing. It's almost as much control as you had over having daughters is as much control as I had over building this business.
Yeah.
My father and I are running a real estate portfolio. He made a small passive investment back in 2009 to help a struggling business. And one day I'm helping run it. And then all of a sudden, I'm the CEO of a company with 12 stores and 225 women underneath me. So people are like, oh, well, did you study fashion? Do you know much about fashion? I said, well, everything I know, I kind of learned on the job and dealing with women on a day-to-day basis. I'm lucky that I have my sister in the business to deal with all of the actual fashion. But it turns out that running a retail business and running a fashion business are very similar because you're opening up stores, you're building out stores, you're negotiating leases. And as a landlord, one of my primary roles being a commercial landlord, now I'm just on the other side of the coin. So kind of worked out well together, but working alongside all those women, I somewhat in solidarity with you, looking at your Instagram account and just seeing the way that you're interacting with your daughters in that beautiful way, I can just kind of relate.
Oh, thank you, man. It's probably the number one reason why I became an entrepreneur, and the number one reason why I wanted to be, my own boss and a business owner, was to have the flexibility to be able to spend time with them, to do the things with them as I got older and as they got older. And so I would tell, anybody, you want to be a family man, you want to be a family woman, being able to pursue a business career that allows you to have that flexibility is paramount. It really is. If I had to start all over today, I wouldn't do anything different from a career standpoint.
That's phenomenal. How did you meet your wife?
We met in college. I was at the Citadel. I played football at the Citadel many, many moons ago, almost 25 years ago. And actually, it was 25 years. And she was at the College of Charleston. She was on the dance team at College of Charleston. We ran in the same crowd. We were friends for years. And then finally, we just ended up going with a group to a mixer one night. She had a sorority mixer that was with with the Citadel. And man, I kissed her goodnight that night and never looked back. That was the last girl I ever kissed. So we've been together in some capacity for over 25 years.
Wow, that's phenomenal. It's funny you brought up the next question I was going to ask is you must have played some kind of sports growing up.
Yeah. I played football all my life, and then at the Citadel, I walked on the football team. I wasn't a scholarship athlete or anything like that. I was a scrub. I played scout team, and then ended up my junior and senior year playing rugby. So always was involved in some kind of contact sport, and love it. I wish I could still play football, but the body doesn't hold up like it did 20 years ago.
Football is another great metaphor for life and business. There's so much strategy and teamwork. And with Tom Brady pulling off this incredible 7 Super Bowl wins of this, past last month or a couple weeks ago, just there's so many great lessons on the football field. Do you see any parallels with jiu-jitsu?
I do. And I would say one of the first things that pops into my head immediately is, football is extremely hard. If it wasn't, there'd be a lot more people playing football. Jiu-jitsu is extremely hard. If it wasn't, the mats would be full all the time. And life is freaking hard too. It's constantly throwing things at you. The more you become an adult, the older you get, the tougher you see how life is and the more humble you become. And I think that those parallels go the same way with jiu-jitsu and with football. And especially with jiu-jitsu, because it's something that I can hopefully be able to do for the rest of my life. As soon as you think you're great, as soon as you win a world championship, as soon as you win a Pan Am championship, and you go up to the next level and you end up getting your tail kicked. There's always somebody better. There's always somebody faster, stronger, with more experience. And that is a great metaphor for life as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, listen, those masters divisions that you've been competing in, and there's no joke. The guys that are in there, the world champions, pro fighters. It's no joke. So it's, you're still competing at a very, very, very high level. Extremely.
Yeah, I look at the divisions nowadays, and it's kind of like I kind of cringe when I look at them. I've gone up against Salo. I've gone up against Jeff Munson. I've gone up against Babalu. I've gone up against Roberto Godoy. I mean, there's so many different guys that have been former UFC fighters, multiple time world champions. These guys were, are my heroes, and they're in my division now. And so it's wild. It's wild. There's no free rides, man.
I'm so impressed with that. I mean, I can't tell you how beautiful that is to be able to go compete against these guys, these legends, and I've watched the Masters tournaments, and wow. I mean, to be able to compete at that high level as you get older, it's fantastic. I didn't think that after I stopped playing college sports, I played college lacrosse for 2 years, and I skied for my school for 2 years. It was both at the club level, but it was it was very competitive club level. When I was a high school skier, my ski racing senior year, I was top 25 in the division. Oh, wow. When I went to college, I went from skiing 70 and 80-day seasons, so on the mountain every day, to basically only skiing on the weekends. And boy, do you lose every single bit of athleticism and technique that you had if you're not doing it every single day. So I only made it to my sophomore year. In my sophomore year ski racing, we had 12 races, and I only completed 3. Every other time, I either wiped out or almost killed myself, taking massive spills. And it was 2 years after that I found jiu-jitsu. After I graduated college, and I needed something to do, I needed to stay competitive. And in 2009, I found jiu-jitsu, and it shook my whole entire world and changed my life. And it's the best thing that I've ever done for myself, for my career, for my life, for happiness. When I don't do jiu-jitsu, like you said, your wife knows when you need to go do it.
Yeah.
My wife knows when I need to go and train.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, we hear it so much, being in the jiu-jitsu world, how jiu-jitsu does change your life, or how you couldn't live without jiu-jitsu. But I tell anybody who's on the fence, just give it a shot. And, be careful, if you're older, definitely listen to your body, but get out there, give it a shot, and see what it can do for your life, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, what it can do for your marriage, what it can do for you from a business standpoint. Like you said, as a business owner, as a leader, every aspect of your life, I think, can be enhanced from jiu-jitsu. I know it has for me, and I've seen it with hundreds, if not thousands of other people as well.
Yeah, so true. Are there any jiu-jitsu principles when you're in the course of teaching at SwampFox that you like to bring on the mat that equally apply?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big guy when it comes to basics and fundamentals. The older I get, the more time on the mat, the more time competing, the more I realize how important the basics are and how important the fundamentals are. You cannot get past a certain level without having extremely strong basics, extremely strong fundamentals. And one of my favorite authors, Jim Rohn, said, there are no new fundamentals. Basically be wary if somebody comes to you and says, I've got a new fundamental, because the fundamentals aren't going to ever change. They're our foundation. So earlier we were talking about investing. There are no new fundamentals when it comes to investing. There are no new basics. We know what the fundamentals are. Now, things have changed, and markets change, and economies change, and things that we're dealing with right now with liquidity and with the Fed pouring money into the market. All those variables change, but the fundamentals are still the same. And I would say the same thing goes for relationships. Fundamentally, what's the most important thing? Respect, love, integrity, trust. All those basic fundamentals come before anything else.
Beautifully said. I completely agree. It's not the answer that beginners like to hear.
Yeah, it's not sexy. It's like we talked about. It's not.
But it has impacted my life in ways that I never could have imagined. And when I was in college and I took accounting the first time, because I had to drop the class because I was going to fail. And that's a true story.
Ditto, I did as well.
And it was an 8 a.m. class, my sophomore year, I said, I'm going to take an 8 a.m. class. I'm going to wake up early every day. I'm going to smoke this semester. I ended up having too much fun. So when I ended up passing accounting and I began my career, it was just words on a page. I didn't get anything from it. But in 2017, I went to a program at the Harvard Business School online, and I took a program that they offered called Core. It's 3 classes over a few months, 180 hours, and I retook accounting at Harvard. And it was the most rewarding experience of my life because I had a decade of business experience to filter through. It was all the same things I learned in college, except I didn't get it then. And then after 10 years of experience already being the CEO of a company with hundreds of people working for me, I felt like I had to go back and do it for them and for myself because I had holes. I had holes in my game. I had holes in my business game. And after I took those courses at Harvard, and by the way, I've taken many other courses and fundamental courses, you just have to keep going back and studying those fundamentals. And I went from hating accounting in college and not getting it to loving accounting because I was doing it every day at my business. And so business fundamentals are as important as showing up and drilling and making sure that you really take every aspect of the fundamental part of jiu-jitsu seriously. I saw on your Instagram account that you've been putting up books that you love.
Yes.
And I think that reading is as fundamental as it gets.
Yes.
One of the books that you put up is one that I have been devouring lately, and that's The 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene.
Yes.
This book is earth-shattering, but I do think that it kind of goes a little bit past what we are discussing about fundamentals. I think that it's a little advanced, honestly.
It is.
What are your reflections on this book?
Well, I made a goal this year and I said I'm going to read 1 book a week. And so admittedly, sometimes I'll pick a shorter book or I'll pick a book that, it'll be more of a 30,000 foot book instead of being a very detailed book or, a book that's down here at sea level. 33 Strategies became recommended to me from several other guys in the jiu-jitsu community. And they said, man, this is like my Bible for life. You've got to check it out. So I grabbed it, I read it, and I didn't want to put it down. And immediately I thought, oh no, I've committed to read another 48 books for the rest of the year. I could spend the whole year on this book. And so basically, man, Jordan, I put it aside. I haven't gone back to it yet, but I cannot wait to. I'm going to pick 12 from this year, and next year I'm going to do 1 a month, and that's going to be January. And I can't wait to. I can't wait to delve deeper into it. It is very detailed. It's intense, and there's a few of those strategies in there that I think could be just paramount from a business standpoint, from a jiu-jitsu standpoint. I mean, just life in general. So I hate that I felt like I kind of skirted through it. And this happened with a couple of the other books too, where I thought a week's not enough time. It really isn't. This needs to be something I reference on a daily basis. So I'm excited to go back to it. Admittedly, I did not get as deep as I'd like to in it, but I'm looking forward to it.
I've been in the exact same boat dozens of times. I normally read at least 1 book a week, but like you, the normal business book, like Start With Why by Simon Sinek or a Ryan Holiday book, takes about 8 hours to read in my experience. And you could pound through 4 or 5 books a month, like those small business books. But when you want to get through a book like, I'll just pull it out, Grant, which is like, I mean, this is not a weak book. This is my next book. It was recommended to me by a friend and a podcast guest here, Rich Byrne, who's the CEO of president of Benefit Street Partners, $25 billion REIT. He's also the CEO of Kasai. And he asked me for the list of my favorite books. What does that tell you about the CEO of a massive organization? He was the former CEO of Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world. He asked me for my book recommendations, and I'm only on the path of my career. This is someone who's so successful, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt under John Donahar, and then I asked him for his recommendations, and this was the first one. But I can't read this in a week. This is going to take me at least a month, maybe 2 months to read. Sure. And like you, the first reading of 33 Strategies of War, which was about 3 years ago, I listened to it on tape. And I breezed through it too fast. It's just as thick as this book. And I have been reading it slowly over the past 2 months. And there's so much advanced strategy and tactics in there. And unfortunately, it's not the first book that I would recommend a beginner to read, but it has so many answers in business strategy. And once you get to the black belt level and you want to maximize the value of your business, there's been so many beautiful things in there.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I really can't. I'm looking forward to getting deeper with it. I almost wish I wouldn't have made the commitment to read one book a week just so I could jump back on it. But I threw that out there to hold myself accountable because I know how quickly I'll get away from the books. I'll allow other things to distract me. But I don't have many regrets in life, Jordan. But one of my biggest regrets is not becoming an avid reader earlier in life. I really, really wish I would have. This has been something that's really hit me within the last few years. Ever since I've been a business owner, I've read a lot, but now I don't turn on the TV, man. It's like if I'm not doing jujitsu or hanging out with my kids or working, I'm reading. And it's almost become like a good addiction. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, man. The first thing I do is read. If I'm in the car, I listen to an audio book. If I'm, at lunch break, I'm listening to an audio book or reading. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back or anything. I'm just saying from the standpoint of now, I realize how important it is. You mentioned a CEO's, list of books. Average CEO reads over 60 books a year. The average American reads less than one, and I've been that average before, and I feel like I got some catching up to do, man.
Now I'm so happy that we're talking about this because it's almost as if beginners, they don't believe you. They're like, you don't read that many books. Like, oh, you're not actually doing that. And it's like, oh no, actually we are. It is the key. There's nothing else that you are not going to get to the level that you want unless you read. And it's the same answer in jiu-jitsu as mat time. If you do not come and train, you are not going to get good. Period. End of story. And you are not going to become successful if you don't read. It's not. It's a fact. You might have the best idea in the world. You might be the luckiest SOB, and somehow you buy Bitcoin at 3,000 and now it's 50,000 and you got $1 million in your bank account. But what are you going to do with that $1 million now? You got lucky one time. If you don't have the fundamental understanding of how to reallocate those funds and invest properly, you're doomed. You're doomed to lose it. Just gambling. And so the answer is reading. And it's my number one bit of business advice for all young people. I didn't start early either. I didn't start until my late 20s. And that was because of necessity. And this was a famous business story. I've told it many times. But when I started running mixology, I had a lot of early success. It was the equivalent of gambling. I just used what I knew. I was scrappy. I was a little bit smarter than the average retailer. But as soon as I had to start leading an organization, I was being exposed because I didn't have the answers to the questions. And I went and I met with this private equity guy. His name is Keith Miller. He's one of the most successful private equity guys in the whole industry. He's done deals like he was the money behind Supreme. He did the Gap and the Intermex deal. He did All Saints. His list of companies is in the multi billions.
Wow.
And we told him the story, my father and I, and he started asking me questions about retail. Jordan, what's the four-wall margin? What's the inventory turnover? And I didn't have the answers to his questions. And he looked at me straight in the eyes. He said, Jordan, you're a nice kid. You got a good business, but you don't know enough about your business. And it shook my whole world. And I had two options. I could have walked out of that meeting and said, F you, you don't know what you're talking about. I saved my business. Or I could learn. And I decided to learn. And I wrote down everything that he asked me that I didn't know the answers to. And I started calling my mentors and my business consultants. I said, what's four-wall margin? What's inventory turnover ratio? Why do I have to know this? And that set me on that was around 2013, 2014. And that's what set me on my path of reading and learning. Yeah. And some people, they decide that they know more. And I decided that I didn't know anything. So,
well, it's interesting you say it that way, Jordan, because every book I pick up, I'm like, man, I know nothing. I know nothing. The more I read, of course, I'm educated, but then the more I realize how much I don't know, and how much experience is out there. And I was talking to my oldest daughter the other day. We went and had breakfast, and I said, honey, you got to learn from your mistakes. But let me tell you something even better than learning from your mistakes is learning from somebody else's mistakes. And I said, you're not going to be able to do that without reading and without having mentors. And
Right.
man, it's so important.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jim Rohn. Do you have any personal mentors who have helped coach you in your career or in jiu-jitsu that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, I do. From a jujitsu standpoint, man, I hesitate to name anybody because I'm afraid that I'll miss somebody. But my professor, Tim Jones, not many people have heard of Tim, but Tim is 140 pounds soaking wet. He's a black belt under Raymond Kilgore, who's a black belt under Carlos Machado. And Tim came from he's from this area of South Carolina, but he moved to Texas as a law enforcement officer and came back after he retired and started SwampFox Jiujitsu, and I purchased SwampFox from him. But I remember walking into the academy the first day, and at that time I was much bigger. I was probably 240 pounds, and I saw this little guy walk up to me with a black belt on, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill this poor little guy. And he beat my rear for months and years on end. And I thought, if this guy can do this to me, then I've got to really learn this art. I've got to get really good at it, you know. And he taught me so much about jujitsu and just about being a very patient guy, very patient with my jujitsu. But at the same time, he was the guy that instilled the fundamentals in me, and I think that have allowed me to be successful in jujitsu. Also, at the brown belt level, I don't know if you know Gibson Saw, Spartan Academy here in South Carolina. He's in Columbia, South Carolina. Multiple time adult world champion, Pan Am champion, great guy. And he helped me tremendously at my purple brown belt level, taking some private lessons with him, working with him. And then, man, I've got a group of instructors at my academy, our black belts, brown belts, and purple belts that help me so much. And I can't even name them all because I'll miss out them. But we've got a rotating group of about 9 or 10 instructors that now learn something new from them every day. I really do. I can go into their class, watch them teach as the head instructor, the highest ranking individual in the school, and immediately think, oh gosh, kind of like picking up a book. I don't know anything. Here's my brown belt teaching me something, you know? And
Wow.
so, yeah, several. And then from a business standpoint, I've got several that have worked directly for State Farm, some that have even retired, some in the financial services industry that have helped me in the past. And, you know, funny you mentioned mentors. I've got one of Tim Ferriss's book, Tribe of Mentors, here, and I love it. It's one of those, it's one of those big, thick ones. It's not as thick as Grant or 33 Strategies, but it's one I love. And I feel like in anything, you kind of have to build a board of advisors, or you have to build a board of directors to help you out and guide you. And just as much as in business as in jiu-jitsu.
That's right. That book specifically is, it's not a single read. It's a daily read. That's a keep on your desk, flip through, read 2 pages, read 3 pages, and you just do it every day. And you have the best and brightest minds in the world, and they're there to help you. All you have to do is crack the page.
Yeah, that, excuse me, that and Tools of the Titans, man. I'll flip back and I'll say, all right, who was that Tim Ferriss interviewed that did so-and-so, and go back and I'll look at it. I'm like, yeah, great reference manuals.
Yeah,
awesome.
those really are great books. Well, Brian, it's such a pleasure to get to know you, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. I hope we can keep this going. I'd love to have you as a featured guest on the podcast again, and maybe next time we can get a little bit more technical on your industry and insurance, and maybe there's something that you can add and help people understand how to set up their insurance for their first business.
Well, man, anything I could do to help. It was a pleasure being on the podcast, and I'd love to pick your brain sometime, man. You've got a lot of experience, and I'd like to get some of that as well. So looking forward to it, Jordan. That'd be great.
Anytime, if I could be of service to you in any way, you just reach out to me. And once again, just a pleasure to have you, Brian. Not exactly related by blood, but we're through the family of business.
That's right, man. Well, it's been a pleasure, Jordan. I enjoy the podcast and looking forward to the future episodes.
Thanks, Brian. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care, buddy.